optioned this book in 2019, and at the time it had sold just under 1 million copies. And I had
Why
never
did
read
you
a.
read it? Yeah.
Well, my
Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni arrived at court for a scheduled settlement conference, prompting speculation about whether the dispute might be nearing an end, while commentary around the situation has included panel discussions featuring figures like Andy Senior, Ron Zambrano, and Greg Dahl, who shared perspectives on the legal process and its potential outcomes. According to unverified reports and circulating accounts, tensions may have escalated behind closed doors, with some claims suggesting that Reynolds reacted strongly during discussions involving Baldoni's legal team, while other speculative descriptions portray Blake Lively as visibly shaken. However, these details remain unconfirmed and should be treated as conjecture rather than established fact. What can be confirmed is that such proceedings are a routine part of civil litigation, as courts, particularly in federal cases, often require parties to attend in-person settlement conferences overseen by a magistrate judge, not to force a resolution but to ensure both sides engage in good faith discussions, submit mediation statements, and explore whether a settlement is feasible. These conferences do not indicate that a case will settle, or even that the parties are willing to compromise. Instead, they serve as a procedural step where each side's legal arguments may be tested, strengths and weaknesses examined, and potential outcomes, including summary judgment, discussed. Public narratives often dramatize these appearances, but the reality is a structured legal process in which both Justin Baldoni and Lively, along with their legal teams, continue to present their positions under court supervision. And while some commentary has expressed strong opinions about the merits of the claims and the likelihood of dismissal, there are no verified court records or reliable reports confirming any specific emotional reactions or private exchanges attributed to those involved, underscoring that much of the more sensational detail remains speculative rather than factual. A significant amount of online commentary tends to dramatize routine legal steps such as settlement discussions, rejected offers, or procedural hearings into emotional or personal turning points, when in reality these are strategic decisions made by legal teams as part of the normal progression of a case, which continues through the formal court process unless a settlement is actually reached. In this situation, some commentators have expressed the opinion that a resolution may not be imminent, citing perceived egos or litigation posture, while others suggest that if they were in Blake Lively's position, they would consider pursuing a strategy to resolve the case in a way that preserves reputation. However, these views are subjective and reflect personal analysis rather than confirmed legal outcomes. Similarly, claims about how a judge, such as suggestions that Louis J. Lemon may be leaning toward weakening or dismissing aspects of the case, are speculative unless supported by formal rulings, as courts base their decisions on motions, admissible evidence, and establish legal standards rather than outside commentary. Legal experts frequently offer differing interpretations of a case's strength, but those opinions do not determine judicial decisions, and unless an official order or judgment has been issued, statements about one side facing inevitable defeat or the case being significantly undermined should be treated as opinion, not fact. Discussion has also included speculation about whether Justin Baldoni and Lively might encounter each other during proceedings and how such an interaction might unfold, with some suggesting they could briefly meet for a joint presentation before being separated. However, there is no verified court record confirming specific staging, confrontations, or emotionally charged exchanges of that nature in actual civil proceedings. Even when both parties attend the same settlement conference, the process is structured and controlled by the court, often involving mediators or magistrate judges who manage interactions professionally, sometimes placing parties in separate rooms to facilitate negotiation. While such settings can naturally involve tension as each side presents arguments and evaluates risks, portrayals of dramatic face-to-face confrontations or personal breakdowns remain speculative, unless substantiated by official filings or reliable reporting, underscoring that much of the narrative surrounding high-profile litigation is shaped by interpretation rather than confirmed fact. There are instances in legal disputes where individuals choose to speak privately without their attorneys in an attempt to reach a personal resolution, but in high-profile litigation, especially cases involving public figures like Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, that scenario is generally unlikely, as attorneys play a central role in managing communication, protecting legal positions, and ensuring that nothing is said or agreed to that could negatively impact the case. Legal counsel typically advises clients against private, unsupervised discussions because even well-intentioned conversations can create complications, misunderstandings, or unintended legal consequences, which is why most settlement efforts occur within structured environments overseen by a judge or mediator. Claims about emotional reactions, private confrontations, or behind-the-scenes breaking points involving figures such as Reynolds or Lively are not supported by verified records or reliable reporting and should be treated as speculative. What is more grounded in reality is that high-profile litigation often brings significant stress, public scrutiny, and reputational considerations. all of which legal teams must carefully manage through formal filings, strategy, and controlled negotiations rather than informal personal exchanges. Much of the surrounding commentary, such as suggestions that one side needs an exit plan, that a case is on the verge of collapse, or that a judge is signaling a particular outcome, reflects opinion rather than confirmed fact. Courts make decisions based on legal arguments, admissible evidence, and procedural standards, not on external narratives or predictions. Until a formal ruling is issued, statements about dismissal, victory, or inevitable defeat remain speculative. In practice, settlement discussions in cases like this are usually conducted through a structured process, often referred to as shuttle diplomacy, where each party remains in separate rooms while a judge or mediator moves between them, conveying offers and counteroffers. This setup helps reduce tension and keeps negotiations focused. Judges may also delay rulings on key motions, such as summary judgment, to maintain leverage and encourage both sides to seriously consider settlement. Ultimately, while resolution is always a possibility in civil litigation, whether through agreement or court decision, it unfolds within a controlled legal framework rather than through spontaneous or emotionally driven encounters. Observers of civil litigation often emphasize that uncertainty is a normal feature of the pretrial process rather than a strategy directed at any specific party, and that motions for summary judgment can play a significant role in shaping how a case progresses by determining whether certain claims meet the legal standard required to proceed to trial. When such motions are granted, they can narrow the scope of litigation by removing claims or issues, while a denial may indicate that material factual disputes exist that must be resolved by a jury. As a result, settlement discussions during this stage are often influenced by how both sides evaluate these procedural developments, along with the risks, costs, and unpredictability of proceeding to trial. In high-profile cases, media coverage and public commentary can develop alongside the formal legal process, but courts are required to base their rulings solely on admissible evidence and applicable legal standards, independent of external narratives. Legal teams typically advise clients not only on litigation strategy but also on managing public communication, recognizing that perception and commentary can evolve throughout the course of the case. While commentators sometimes compare ongoing disputes to past high-profile trials, each case is ultimately assessed on its own facts and legal merits, and the existence of settlement negotiations does not in itself indicate any party's legal strength or likely outcome. If negotiations fail, litigation proceeds through additional pretrial motions and potentially to trial, with courts maintaining procedural safeguards such as discovery rules, evidentiary standards, and structured opportunities for both sides to present arguments. Legal analysts frequently note that the inherent uncertainty of litigation is one of the main drivers of settlement discussions, as parties must weigh time, cost, and risk against the possibility of a negotiated resolution. And while these negotiations can be complex and influenced by multiple pressures, the court's role remains focused on applying the law impartially. In more complex civil disputes, additional factors such as insurance coverage may sometimes influence litigation strategy by affecting how defense costs are funded, potentially reducing immediate financial pressure on a party and altering the economic incentives surrounding settlement decisions. Though such arrangements do not determine legal outcomes, another key factor is the reliance on legal counsel, as clients depend on attorneys to interpret procedural developments, assess risk, and translate evolving court actions into practical strategy, which can sometimes differ from how the situation is portrayed in public commentary or media coverage. In many civil disputes, the process can become with significant legal costs accruing as both sides engage in discovery, motions, practice, and strategic preparation, creating pressure as the uncertainty of trial is weighed against the benefits of continued litigation. Although emotional reactions or public commentary do not factor into judicial decisions, when settlement cannot be reached, cases proceed through structured legal stages, including motions that may resolve or narrow certain claims before trial, with judges exercising discretion to manage proceedings, encourage negotiation, and issue rulings that clarify the scope of issues to be decided. In some instances, partial resolution occurs through dismissal of certain claims, while others proceed to trial, where factual disputes are ultimately resolved by a judge or jury. And although public interest in such disputes can lead to broader discussions about the legal system, reputation, and media influence, those discussions remain separate from the formal judicial process. Ultimately, the outcome of any case depends on the application of law to the evidence presented in court, as well as procedural determinations made by the presiding judge. And whether a case settles or proceeds to trial, the legal system is designed to provide a structured mechanism for resolving disputes, regardless of public attention, with uncertainty remaining a defining feature of civil litigation that continuously shapes the strategies and decisions of the parties involved.